so you guys can see whoever is studying in our college. We know that there are some undergrad students here as well. So thank you so much for joining. Also want to remember you that we'll have, this is the last speaker series of the season. So we'll finish the season with a very great speaker. And then next week, I want to remind you guys that we'll have an industry conversation panel with Goodwill. So we'll have like three sustainability leaders from Goodwill that will come to our college and talk about recycling, plastic and textile recycling. So if you want to join us, will be a very engaging conversation as well. So let's get started and give a round of applause to Cassie. Thank you so much.
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't
They'll be
matter.
here.
Yeah,
Okay. Right, thank you, everybody, for having me. My name is Cassie Cordova. As was stated, I am the Sustainability Division Manager for the City of Clearwater. And I'm going to talk today. I'm going to try to gear my talk towards you as students and how I got my start in the field and how I made a career that started really here at Patel.
There you go.
Okay. All right, so like I said, I'll go through my time here at PCGS and then my first job in local government, and then I'll switch more to focus on the city of Clearwater and just talk about some more overarching ideas and concepts of working in local government. So I actually did this speaker series about 2.5 years ago when I first started at the city of Clearwater. And I went back and I listened to it. I didn't know it was out there recorded until like a week ago, and I went back and listened. So I thought I did pretty good, actually. I was very positive. So I'm going to try and stay positive. I don't know if I'm quite as positive now as I was 2.5 years ago. You know, local government's a little tough, but I'm going to try to be positive. All right. So going back to my time here at Patel. I started here in August of 2017, which is kind of crazy because that was almost 10 years ago. And I took my time. I did 2 or 3 classes a semester. I wasn't trying to rush through it. I worked full time as well while I was here. And I did 2 concentrations. So I did sustainable tourism. That was with Dr. Brooke Hansen. And then I did climate change mitigation and adaptation with TH, who I'm sure most of you all know. And then I also did a certificate in food sustainability and security with Dr. Dorsey. So I had a lot of great relationships here. So for my undergrad, I went to the University of Florida. Which was great, obviously, but it was a very big school, and all of my classes, there was like 100 people. I didn't really get to develop a lot of relationships with my professors. So when I came to Patel, I knew that I wanted it to be different. I knew that I wanted to take my classes in person, despite the fact that I live in Pinellas County, so it took me quite a bit to get here. But I wanted to make the effort to kind of build that network because I knew that was going to be really important in getting a job later on. And it was, and I still collaborate, still communicate with PCGS on regular basis on a variety of things. And I've met a lot of people that I met here, either other fellow students or just through programs and projects. I'll go a little bit on some of those. They all kind of came back full circle later on. So I really want to stress how important I think it is that you do that while you're here. Of course, you want to finish the degree and get the diploma and all that, but it's much more than that. You really need to focus on building that network if you want to end up with a career. And I didn't have any experience in sustainability prior to starting at Patel. I didn't have my career was not in that at all. I didn't know anybody when I got my jobs. So I basically, my entire career is built off of everything that I either learned here or the connections that I made here. So I hope that that gives some hope for you if that's the situation you're in. It is possible to, not have a background and do make a career in sustainability. And I was also, I think, Globe, I think we may have started Globe, either we were the first year or the second year, but I was one of the original members of Globe, and I see that that's still a thing. So that's really great. All right, I'm not going to go too into detail on all my projects, but I did just want to touch base on a few of them because really, again, I wanted to focus on how important they were for building those connections. So like I said, I lived in Pinellas County, so driving out here was quite a trek. So when opportunities came up that were closer towards me, I would jump towards them. So one of those was Turn the Tide for Tarpon. Dr. Hansen had connected with this group of very active citizens in Tarpon Springs, and they wanted to get their city to adopt a sustainability action plan and sustainability goals and have a citizen advisory committee and hire a sustainability coordinator, none of which the city had at the time. The city was pretty conservative, so it was quite an uphill battle. So Dr. Brooke invited me, or Dr. Henson invited me to one of their meetings. I was like, great, Tarpon Springs, 15 minutes away, I can do that. And I went, and I was able to really get involved. I actually became the president of it. We turned it into a 501c3, and then we did accomplish all of those goals. We did get the city of Tarpon Springs to do all of those things, which was really great. And obviously now I work at City of Clearwater. I work with the sustainability coordinator of Tarpon Springs. This is the third one now that I've worked with, because they've changed over. Every time a new one starts, I tell them, like, welcome. Created your job. But yeah, that was just a great experience. A lot of, I didn't know what it took to do a 501c3, but it was a great thing to put on my resume and learn kind of my first little introduction to how local government works and going to the city commission meetings and stuff like that. Another opportunity I took advantage of that I'm sure some of you are familiar with is an internship at Fat Beet Farm. Again, that's basically Pinellas County, even though it's technically Tampa, but it was much closer to me, and that was a great experience. I went out, picture is me in the middle of the biodigester that we built. I also did they have a lot of other sustainability initiatives there. And we just recently went back as a field trip for a network that I'll get to later, Pinellas Sustainability and Resilience Network. We went for a field trip there, and it was great to see how much more they're doing there. And I actually walked by the owner. I didn't think she would recognize me, and she was like, "Oh my God, hey!" So it's great to take advantage of these opportunities when they arise. Neither of these were for credit. I just did them to try and just get more into the field. And then for my capstone, I did an internship with the Center for Responsible Travel. So at the time, I really thought I was going to go more into the tourism sector because that was more of my background. And so when I was looking for an internship, it was difficult. I'm sure you guys might know. So I was kind of trying to find an internship that met what I wanted to do. And then I had a bit of an epiphany one day that I said, well, instead of trying to find an internship, why don't I try to find a company that's doing what I want to do and then see if they have internships available. And so that's what I did. I Googled, like sustainable tourism companies. And the main big one is Crest. They're out in DC. And I was on their website and I saw that they had internships, but they didn't have any opening or anything. And I just emailed them and I said, hey, I'm looking for an internship. And they wrote back and they're like, oh, we were just about to post it next week, but sure, we can give you the interview. And then I got that internship. So just a tip, if you're looking for an internship, maybe just look to see what company that you want to work for and see if they have an internship, as opposed to, looking on Indeed or whatever. You might not find the internship that might already be out there. And then one other project I did with Dr. Brooke Hansen was going out to Egmont Key. And I know this project has continued. It was the first year of the project. I know it's continued for several years now to do various things. But we did the LiDAR scanning and the photogrammetry and all that. And I am not a technical person at all, but I thought it sounded like a fun idea. And we got to go out on a boat every day and go out on the beach. it was really cool. We ended up doing a GIS class related with that, which I did not understand at all, but now I can say like I understand GIS a little bit. So that's a good example of doing something that's like totally out of your wheelhouse, just to get more experience. And just a side note on GIS, like you should definitely learn GIS because it's very important. I wish I had learned more back then. And then the last thing I did was the UIC Summer Institute on Sustainability and Energy. That was another thing that a couple, like I think the 2 or 3 years before me, they had somebody from Patel. It was free and it was over the summer and it was in Chicago and it sounded fun. So I applied and I went to that as well. And that was a very different experience. We did like a business prospectus and went out and engaged with the community to solve like a food desert problem and write a proposal. So again, all of these were very completely different experiences, but I would recommend trying to just go out there and see what it is that interests you, even though you might not think that interests you, and see what you can get. And then you'll just build connections and relationships throughout that process. So I graduated in December of 2019. So if we think back then, not a great time to graduate because 2 months later, as I was, looking for a job, we had a little thing called COVID and the entire world economy closed down. So it was very difficult to find a job. And it's very difficult to find a job in this area because obviously you are competing with all the other Patel alumni. So I gave up for a little while because it was COVID. But then when I decided to go back and try and get a job in the sustainability field, I decided that I needed to open up my search and just kind of, I kind of really knew I wanted to work in government at that point. So I just said, I'm just going to throw a wide cast and net and then see what I can get. And so I got this job in James County, Virginia, which if you're not familiar, it's where Colonial Williamsburg is. It's where the other Busch Gardens is. So you remember there's Busch Gardens Africa, Busch Gardens Williamsburg. It's the other one, and the pass works. You can go to that one too. So I just moved from one Busch Gardens to the other. It's a about twice the size of Pinellas County, but a smaller population. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a rural area, but it's obviously not Pinellas County, Tampa Bay. We're very densely populated. I kind of had two roles there. I was the sustainability coordinator as well as the energy manager. And so the sustainability coordinator, that position had existed for about 10 years at that point, which was actually pretty progressive considering it wasn't a particularly progressive area. But there was a foundation, there was programs in place, there was events in place. However, I did add quite a bit in the 2.5 years that I was there. And then as far as the energy management, that was a whole different thing that I, again, didn't have experience in. So I had to take a certificate in energy management, which is really, in my opinion, not really sustainability. It's quite technical, but, I learned a lot and we were able to use a particular software that to evaluate the city or county's energy use. But overall, it was a really great first job in the field because it was a very there was a variety of work to do and it was all kind of like introductory kind of stuff. We were doing litter cleanups and recycling education and a lot of community outreach, like a ton of outreach. I wasn't doing any, like huge federal project, grants and stuff like that. So I feel like it was a good segue into really just understand how local government works. And I had a fantastic, I was surrounded by a bunch of people that had been there for a very long time. It was a very tight-knit community, and I really enjoyed my time there. But I won't go into all the details of the projects. But one thing I would highlight is that I started the quarterly newsletter there, and I definitely recommend that. And I did it when I came to City of Clearwater as well, because we do so much that we can't even remember what we do. So I have to go back and look at those newsletters just to remind myself what I did. And those are a great communication tool to get people involved and interested in what you're doing. so that brings us to the city of Clearwater. So I was living in Virginia and I was keeping an eye on Indeed, just to see what was out there. And I opened it up and I remember the very first thing I saw was City of Clearwater Sustainability Division Manager. And I said, oh, how nice would that be? My hometown, a step up, manager position. You just apply, see what happens. And typically, it takes a very long time to get a job in local government. The interview processes take forever. You have to go through all this stuff. But that was not the case. I actually got an interview like the next week, and then they called me the next morning and gave me the job on the spot. And I had bought a house in Virginia, so I had to very quickly move to Florida. But obviously, I was moving back home. My family's here, so I was able to do that. And I was very, very excited to be back in this area. And I grew up in Clearwater, so like really important for me to, as much as I loved Virginia, I didn't know the community. I didn't know, when people were giving directions, like, oh, you just go down this road and blah. I have no idea what you guys are saying. But when I came back here, I'm like, I know, okay, this is my town. And obviously Clearwater Beach is the most beautiful beach in the world. So I feel very blessed that I get to be the one to protect it. So when I started, I was actually the sustainability division manager, and it was just a team of us two, me and Melody, who's also a Patel alumna. And then about maybe less than a year into the role, there was some reorganization. The department that we were in got dissolved and they put us into Public Works. And Public Works already had the environmental division, which was just 3 people that didn't have a manager. So they decided to merge our divisions together. So I became the manager of now 4 people. And then we were able to get an intern added as well. And so we've been trying to just keep having interns. We don't really have permission or budget, but we just keep doing it. And it's been great. So, for 2.5 years, I was a one-woman show and I did everything. And now it's great to have a lot of support and we can get a lot more done that way. And I was the staff liaison to the Environmental Advisory Board. But the city did actually dissolve that a couple of months ago. I shouldn't say dissolve. It consolidated it with a couple of other boards. But for a while, that was a key part of the job. And this video, I'm not going to play it because I don't think we have sound, but it was one of the projects we did about a year ago. We created this video 101 for staff and the public. Just explaining like what sustainability is, what resiliency is. I think it's about a minute long, but you can find it on YouTube.
But I'm playing the video if you'd like.
You want to play?
Should be playing.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to Clearwater Sustainability 101. In this video, we'll define sustainability, explain how it affects us, and highlight the city's efforts to build a sustainable future. So what is sustainability? Sustainability means meeting today's needs without preventing future generations from meeting theirs. It's built on 3 pillars. The first is people, ensuring fair access to health, safety, and quality of life. Next is the planet, protecting natural resources and minimizing environmental harm. And lastly, prosperity, growing the economy while using resources wisely. So what is resilience? Resilience is the ability to recover from disruptions. Clearwater's Greenprint 2.0 outlines this as key to long-term sustainability. During the 2024 hurricanes, city planning and quick action helped restore services and showed how resilience supports the community. So why does it matter? Sustainability improves our environment, our health, and economy. Reducing emissions and conserving resources helps fight climate change and creates healthier places to live. So what can you do? Everyone plays a role. Simple actions, like reducing waste and conserving energy, add up to real impact.
Is the sound from YouTube, like me playing some videos?
All right, so continuing on with my work at City of Clearwater, we have two kind of foundational documents. One, of course, is our Sustainability Action Plan. That's Greenprint 2.0. It's called 2.0 because there was a Greenprint back in 2011, which was pretty early on. However, they did not have a sustainability coordinator that wrote it. It was the planning department, and then it took them I think about 6 years to hire a sustainability coordinator. So not a whole lot of action happened on the first Greenprint. And then the new coordinator was able to rewrite Greenprint 2.0. And the overarching goals of both of those plans are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by certain percentages by certain years. However, there is some legislation at the moment that may make it difficult for us to continue to have those goals. Maybe not. There is some legislation that says we can't have any net zero goals. So we should be okay with our goals. But in general, honestly, the way it is right now in government is we are just kind of shifting away talking about greenhouse gas emissions as much and just talking about money savings and things like tourism, things like natural resources. It's very political right now. It's at the federal level as well as the state level, but it's down to the local level as well. So we have all sorts of workshops and conversations about how we can safely talk about what we do and convince everybody that what we do not only is good for all the reasons we know that it's good, but also financially, because that's where a lot of the pressure is right now. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on another slide. Oh, wait, sorry. The vulnerability assessment. So you may or may not know that the state of Florida mandated for all local municipalities to do a vulnerability assessment. And it was funded through the Resilient Florida grant program. So when I started, July of 2023, Melody was, she had that project at the time and she said, oh, we're about to wrap this up. So I'm not gonna, I won't transition it over to you. It's almost done. Well, 2 years later, it finished. So it was quite the project. And we had a lot of unforeseen issues, but at the end was a great product that now we can use as a foundation for planning going forward. And so the state mandated that you look at flooding and sea level rise, but we also incorporated heat as go above and beyond. And we hired a consultant. The state required you to do a certain amount of kind of data. But we hired a consultant that built a digital twin of the city. So took all this different data and created a digital twin and then was able to run scenarios based on various climate projections, different levels, low, intermediate, high. And we could look at different scenarios and different mitigation efforts and basically get a ROI, a return on investment, and rank projects to say what would be the best financially viable project that would have the best impact. And then going forward, like I said, we're probably going to shift more towards a resiliency plan. I've got one drafted, and we will probably pull some stuff from Greenprint, but really transitioning more to talk about resiliency. Water is important. People like water quality. Coastal resilience, anything to do with water is generally positively received. Trees, generally, that's a good topic. In addition to, of course, all the other things that we do that are important. But those we want to focus on things that we can get done, that we can get funded, and that we have support for politically. So some things might need to take a step back at the moment, but with pendulum, things will change, and so we just have to go with the flow. Here is some of the sustainability things that we've been working on for quite some time. We are, as of this Friday, our 8th installation will be completed at Countryside Library. And then the City Hall, they're installing the solar right now as well. So these all have, with the exception of Coachman Park, all 8 happened in the last year and a half. So that's been a really awesome thing for the city. And we got a lot of funding for that as well. So we're super proud, and we like to say that we have more solar than any municipality in Pinellas County, including St. Pete. So that is a very big deal because we never get to beat St. Pete at anything, but we are beating them solar. For EVs, we were able to purchase 4 EVs last year with some grant funding, and those came with chargers. And then we have some other chargers that we've installed throughout the city as well. But we definitely want to work on more charging. But EV is one of the things that's a little bit political at the moment. Although with gas prices, I think it'll be less political pretty soon. We have our municipal energy savings program. That is a 5-year program that my predecessor set up. And it is a goal to reduce the municipal, so just our buildings, energy by 20% in 5 years. And we're almost there. We're at 15.7%. That includes electricity, gas, and water. And the program has a cost to it, but if you take the cost of the program and you subtract the savings, the cost avoidance, I should say, we have an overall savings of $2.2 million in the last 4 years. So that's really great. And then one thing we just did recently was our Mayor's Monarch Pledge. And that these are just kind of things that come in, luckily, actually, somebody sent it to the mayor and he sent it to us and he was supportive of it. So we signed this pledge and said we were going to do some action items to help support the mayors, to support the monarchs. And we did those, and we actually just re-signed the pledge again. So we'll do it again. Yeah.
Is your energy savings net or
Yeah.
gross? Is it like after accounting for the solar, or is it like we reduced our emission, our use by 50?
Most of the solar wasn't online for the majority of this program, and actually Coachman Park's the only solar that was online prior to 6 months ago, and that was a new building when it got the solar.
Okay, so the
there was
15% is not including the savings from solar.
Yes. Right, and shifting to some newer stuff that's kind of more resiliency focused. We have just launched our Adopt a Drain program. So that is a program that residents can go and find a map with all the drains throughout the city, and they can pick one on their street or by their park or wherever. They can adopt that drain. We'll give them supplies if they'd like, and then they go and they're responsible for keeping that drain clear of leaves and litter so that it doesn't clog the drain. And obviously all the water that goes through those drains goes straight back out to the waterways. So we're encouraging some civic participation to keep our waterways clean. Another new program that we're about to launch is our urban forestry initiative that Mr. Octavio here helped us get a grant. So we applied for a $100,000 grant, $50,000 with a $50,000 match, and we will be doing the city's first tree canopy assessment. So as part of the vulnerability assessment, we did have some very preliminary data on where our trees are and where we should plant them, but this will be much more, concrete data. And then once we have that information, we will do an urban forestry management plan. So kind of an outline of how we can get our canopy back. And we lost a lot of trees during the storms. So we need to definitely work on our tree canopy. Yep.
Oh, I just had a question. So for urban forestry initiative, will Clearwater be planning on planting native trees?
Yes, definitely.
Probably you're aware, do you use a tree map?
Yeah,
The city of Tampa and even Yesef.
Yeah.
We visit it, yeah.
Yeah, we have a tree inventory that the Public Works, Urban Forestry Division, and they've used that tree map, but this will be more, I think that identifies the type of trees and maybe the health of the trees, whereas
Size,
Yeah.
height, the kind of.
this will be more of like, where are the trees and where can we plant the trees? Because you can look, right now, we know where the trees are according to a map layer, but it doesn't give us the information on what kind of trees they are. And more importantly, you can't just go plant trees anywhere, right? It's quite a science to get the right tree in the right place, especially when you're talking about right of way, because there's a lot of utilities. So it's kind of complicated to make sure that we get the trees in the right place so that they will have the benefits that we want them to have, but not dig into the utilities. So, yeah.
One of the benefits of the tree map was that in the public, so anybody can actually map.
Mhm.
So everybody enters so that map becomes, extensive. So I don't know if it is, you have to subscribe to it.
I'm not sure if we have a subscription, but I think
Okay.
we'll definitely look into it. We're gonna hire a consultant to do all this, so I'm sure they'll come up with that. And then another big thing that we're just about to launch is, I'm calling it the Coastal Resilience and Education Initiative. I might have to change the name because it's not a great acronym and it's kind of long. But we've had a lot of, I'll touch on it soon, but we got a $3 million state appropriation to do some living seawalls. And then the mayor had sent me another grant that he wanted us to apply for that had to do with kind of coastal resilience. And when I was applying for that grant, I reached out to some of our neighboring organizations for letters of support. And then it kind of just snowballed from there. And I just am creating this huge thing. And right now we have Tampa Bay Watch, Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, Tampa Bay Estuary Program, Pinellas County Schools, Roots and Shoots Alliance, Ocean Reef Alliance. There's about, I don't know, 15, 20 organizations. And we're going to all come together starting in May. And I don't know what we're going to do yet, but we're going to have a bunch of people in a room and we're going to talk about what can you do. You do oyster bags, you do oyster balls, you do living seawalls, and we're just going to come up with this huge plan for both East and West Coast of Florida, because, we have two coasts as well as creeks. We have a lot of water. So this is going to be a big thing, and we're going to apply for all sorts of grants, and it's going to be like the biggest.
Are you working with Florida Flood Hub for that?
No, but that's a good idea. We can add them to the list.
Yeah, they're
got-
state funded,
Yeah.
and their job is to get scientists to do coastal resilience.
Yeah, I keep adding more. People keep like, oh, Forward Pinellas. So I just,
ICAR.
everybody said yes so far. So
ICAR as well, the Institute for Coastal Resilience. Those are both USF affiliated. But is living seawall a euphemism for mangrove?
no.
It's a different thing than
Living
mangrove.
seawalls are actually cement seawalls that have, like, you can either 3D print them or you can put the tiles on them.
For the oysters.
For for crevices, for oysters and life. And they also do more wave attenuation and they have a lot of other benefits as well. So living shorelines can incorporate mangroves as well as living seawalls and other things, which we hope to do all of that, not just living seawalls. And then we do a lot of outreach and education. We did take a pause from it when we had all that restructuring. We went into public works and we were with a bunch of engineers and they were like, why do you need to go out and talk to people? But we convinced them that we do need to do that. So we're back out into the community. And we typically we're trying to do a campaign every quarter. And we were just kind of coming up with things. Either we were like, oh, here's an idea, or it's going to be this week. So we'll make it into the quarter. But we decided to come up with a more long-term campaign. So we just kicked it off in January and we're calling it Resilient Clearwater. ... And then different themes from that point on. So the first one was stormwater, and that coincided with our Adopt a Drain launch, as well as Flood Awareness Week. And we created Resilient Ray, he or she. It will be accessorized appropriately per quarter. And then we're now, so we're kind of wrapping up the stormwater one, and we're moving into plants and trees. That'll be the next one, obviously, to kind of coincide with Arbor Day, Earth Month. That's when we'll kind of, towards the end of the month, we'll transition to that. And we've created a web page and all sorts of resources, both internal and community resources. So we'll kind of keep going with this theme. I think for the summer, we'll do heat. Then we'll go back to flooding for the fall, and then on to water quality. So we're just going to kind of keep building on this, keep using Ray, and kind of have this formula so that we can have a streamlined outreach program. Okay, so funding. So this is like super important right now. Like I said, you know, there's a lot of great things that we want to do, but if you don't have funding for it, you're not going to be able to do it. So, you know, but luckily there was a bunch of funding for a few years. And because grants take so long to execute and all that, there's still quite a bit of that funding left over, even though it's all been technically kind of cut back. There's still so many programs out there. And prior to about a year and a half ago, we were not really looking for grants. It wasn't really a thing that the city was really doing. I mean, occasionally there was grants, but then it became, this is what we're going to do. We are the grant people. And somehow we became the grant people, as in me and Melanie and Octavio and our other interns. And so we have become the grant writers for Public Works. And like I said, we didn't really have any grants for. And as of right now, we have about $85 million in grant applications out there. So it's a lot. It's to the point where we're like, we're not writing any more grants. We can't. But, and so far, with the exception of one, we have been awarded all the grants that we've applied for. So there was one that we didn't get, but that's okay, because that was the one that kind of kicked off the coastal resilience. So that was still a good effort, and we'll still use the, you know, that narrative and all those ideas. And yeah, so we got 2 grants for the Adopt a Drain program. We're going to be doing a citywide shoreline assessment. So that will look at so the vast majority of our shoreline is privately owned, right? Residents have their property on the waterfront. So what we're going to do is give them, we want to give them a template to say, okay, your seawall is failing. Instead of just building a new seawall 5 feet higher, here's what you could do instead. And we're going to give them, you know, 3 to 5 to 10 options. Like, you could do mangroves, you could do a living seawall, you could do this, that, and that, to try and get the private residents to have more resilient, because we don't own most of them. And then our community forestry grant that I mentioned. And then we just got this one yesterday. I had to update this slide. We got $450,000 to do a water quality and habitat improvement. So very exciting. And then, like I said, some of the allocations, that $2 million in solar that I worked on forever, still working on. And then we got the $3 million allocations for the living seawalls and some stormwater on North Beach. So that's all, you know, great to get the funding, especially when there's no match. That's even better. And then you take it to city council and get lots of kudos. Another thing that we worked on was the elective pay. So it was a 10-year program. It has been sunsetted, but it's anything that was in place basically by this year, you can still apply for the 30% cash back. So we were able to do that for the solar and EV chargers last year. And then we'll apply this year for the 4 that we did so 2 years ago, and then last year, and then next year we'll still be able to apply for the 4 that we're doing this year. So we've only gotten $132,000 back, but that's because we've only really done the one Coachman Park solar. So we're expecting well over $1 million back. And the great thing about that is I convinced everybody to let me keep that money. So even though I didn't really spend the money, I now get to keep it. And so hopefully then, even when all this federal funding kind of dries up as it is, we'll still be able to continue to do these projects with additional funding, of course, but we have a little bit of a nest egg, which is great. And then another thing we've been looking at is some Duke rebates. They're just like for installing EV chargers and doing energy efficiency upgrades.
Okay, so if, like the extra money that like you or your team will be keeping, like that will also be like reinvested into other projects, correct?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Have you been talking to the Dump Duke people?
No, we don't. I don't talk about Duke. I like Duke, honestly. I think I'm okay with Duke, but I don't want to get. So I learned this here at Patel. Philippides isn't here, but I don't know if he still says this, but sustainability is profitability, and I say it all the time because inherently the idea is, right, sustainability is we want to conserve resources, and to conserve resources, you save money because resources cost money. So I always try to talk about how no matter, like, everybody wants to focus on money, and I say, great, let's focus on money, because if you want to focus on money, then you're going to be sustainable. If you want to look at what the total cost of ownership of a vehicle is, you're going to see that the EV is cheaper. So I'm on board with talking about the money because A, that's how I get things done, but B, the cheapest way in the long run is going to be the more sustainable way. And I also try to just put politics aside. You know, local government is not supposed to be political, and I remind people of that on a regular basis because it does become political. And I just say, hey, I don't, you know, we're not talking about that. We're talking about how we're gonna get things done. And then, how much time do I have? Okay, so this last couple of slides, I just wanted to focus on how important it is to build your network within your city or organization, whatever it is. We cannot do everything, right? Greenprint 2.0 has like 157 action items. I cannot do 157 action items. I can give you a pilot project and I can maybe talk about like what should be done, but I need these other departments to step up and do it with me or without me, really, is ideal. And so in order to do that, you've got to get everybody on your team. And so it's about relationship building and it takes time. And I think, you know, Melody was great at it before me. She's been with the city for like 4 years now, and now I've been there coming up on 3. So this is something that really takes time, but it's super, super important because if you don't have everybody, you know, on your team, then you're not going to get anything done. So this is like us with Parks and Rec up there and our solid waste department and our marine and aviation department. And I would say we have allies in every department now, and we're just building on those relationships. We want to make sure that it's not just us bringing them ideas, you know, they bring us ideas and they're doing that. You know, our public utilities, they are putting solar on one of their chambers. Like we didn't tell them to do that, but they're doing it. So that's our kind of goal is to get everybody else to do these things with or without us. And then another super, super important thing, this was important in Virginia and it's important here as well. And this is your interagency collaboration. So we have, it starts at PSRN, so that's Personnel Sustainability Resilient Network. So, you know, there's like 24, 34, I don't know how many municipalities in Pinellas County. So we have our meetings with them. And then we have TB-SRN, so that broadens it out to include the city of Tampa and Pasco County, and actually I think even Sarasota. And then we have FSDN, so that's Florida, and I'm the chair of that. And that's a great resource because Florida's complicated. And so when you have a question, especially when it comes to policy or something like that, you send it out to that and you'll get all these great responses. And then of course we have the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, which this is basically what they do. Their whole point is to collaborate regionally. And then SSDN, which is the Southeast Sustainability Directory Network. So those are all great resources. They all have listservs. So when you have a question and you just ask everybody and you'll get 20 answers in a couple of hours, hopefully. This is, you know, we have monthly calls, we have workshops, we have all sorts of great ways to communicate. And this is how we stay up to date on a lot of our policies, new ideas. You know, if somebody says, hey, you know, we just bought these electric fire trucks and they're great. Or they'll say, we bought these police vehicles and they're not great. You know, so we get all that information to see what everybody else is doing because we're all doing pretty new stuff all the time. So it's not like everybody's been doing the same thing for the last 20 years. Every year is something different. So we need to learn from our peers. And don't reinvent the wheel, right? If you want to do something, just find out who else has done it already and copy them. And that works really well. And I think I've touched upon this already, but just overall what it's like to work in local government, it's very different, right? So these all 3 pictures were in the last week. So I was at city council accepting a proclamation, shaking the hands of the mayor. I was up on the roof that I had to climb on and check the solar installation to see, I was reviewing the pay app to see what they'd done so far. And then we were out for Neighborhoods Day talking with the community about the Adopt a Drain. So this is literally within days of each other. And I could have 100 more photos that show all sorts of different things. Most of them I'd be sitting at a computer, but doing lots of different things on the computer. But it's interesting, and you'll never get bored. You'll always be learning. You'll learn from other departments, and there's a lot of different skills that you need, right? You have to be able to coordinate with other people. Like I said, you have to get people on your team. You have to be able to smile a lot. But the best part of, I think, working for local government is that you get to see your impact like every day. So it's not just, I'm doing spreadsheets or whatever, like I'm doing things, and then I can drive around and be like I can go to the library. That library there is a library I take my son all the time. And now I'm gonna be like, there's solar on this roof bigger than me. It's very rewarding to actually see the change in what you're doing. So I love working in government most of the time. Obviously, there are difficulties, but it's a great field to work in. And last, I always give a shout out to our newsletter. So this is that newsletter that I talked about. If you don't follow us already, you can scan the QR code. We put it out quarterly. It just came out last week. But that's kind of a way to keep up with what we're doing. And it's our kind of main communication tool, as well, of course, social media and all the other stuff. So I think that's it. Yeah, I wanted to leave time for some questions.
What obstacles have you encountered, like when trying to pass sustainability projects?
So there's 2 main obstacles, right? One is money and one is political support. And sometimes you can have the money and not have the support. And sometimes you can have the support and not the money. So you definitely need to, like I said, there's a million things you can do in sustainability, right? We all want to do the solar. We all want to buy the EVs. We all want to build living seawalls. There's so many things that you can do, but you just have to pick what it is that your elected officials want to do and what your city manager wants to do and what your residents want them to do. And there's some might not be able to buy any more EVs for the next couple of years. Okay, well, so I won't, but I can do all these other things. So you just have to do what everybody supports doing and what you can get funding for. And you'll still be able to do lots of great work because there's so much work to be done.
With your adopted drains, do you work with nonprofit organizations, or is it just solely distributes everything?
So for the Adopt a Drain, we actually did hire a nonprofit. It's Hamline University. They're out in, I forget what state, around the West Coast, but they created this program for themselves. And then they did such a good job that they basically now anybody can hire them to do it, and it's very minimal cost. And they build the platform, they build all the marketing materials, and we just put their website onto our website. They send out all the welcome packets, they send everything. The only thing that we have to do is give out the physical supplies, and that's something that we added because we wanted to give that. So yeah, we hired them, and they're a 501c3.
So you have this vulnerability assessment done? So is it only related to sustainability or anything related? And what were the key findings of that report?
So, well, like I said, we looked at sea level rise, flooding, and for flooding, we looked at like pluvial flooding and riverine flooding and all the flooding. It's a lot of floodings. And then we looked at heat as well. And so as to be expected, it's getting hotter and things are going to flood. And most likely the Clearwater Beach, Barrier Island, is going to flood quite a bit. So it's not too surprising, the results that we found. But what's good about it is now we have that data. So when we do want to go build our next fire station or whatever it is that we're going to build, we can look at this model and say, that's probably not a great place to put it because that's going to be underwater in 50 years. But getting that as part of the process, we're not quite there yet, but we would like to be.
Do you think it will affect your water sources? Maybe groundwater if they're using?
We didn't look at that, so I'm not sure.
How can government make like the benefits of sustainability more tangible to like its citizens? Because like these products are great and like there's like been great change, but like sometimes like the average citizen like might be like more narrow in their viewpoint in like sustainability. Like for example, a person going to like maybe the Jimmy B. Kill Library, for example, might say, oh cool, there's solar panels like powering this library, but how does that affect me? So just like kind of a question like how can government like do a better job, or at least like just kind of show to like constituents or whatever, like that these sustainable benefits actually like benefit like in a way that they can like see.
Yeah.
And stuff.
It's a great question. So communication is super, super, super important. And like I said, I work with a bunch of engineers and I have to tell them like, we can't just do these things. We have to then tell people about it. And we have to tell about it in a way that they're going to understand. So I cannot write a paragraph that says I put 332 solar panels that have 8 point whatever megawatts and blah, blah, blah. Like nobody knows what that means. So what I have to say is I put this many solar panels and that's going to power 60% of the building's electricity, and it's going to reduce carbon emissions equivalent to planting 5,000 trees, or the equivalent of taking 5,000 cars off the road. Like we need to talk in terms that people are going to understand because they don't understand megawatts and
it's gonna save us this much money.
yeah. Well, and that's really what we talk about now more is the money, but we still try to throw in the carbon equivalent. And but yeah, so we have to, and I tell people that my little quarterly newsletter that I put out, I mean, it takes probably 5 minutes to read it. I spend 10 hours, maybe 20 hours writing it. It's a lot of work because you've got to go back and what did we do? Okay, we were here. Well, when was, and you got to put in that information and then just getting all the information, but then you have to write it so that it sounds good and sounds understandable. And then we have to get it out on all the other communications channels. So we have a public communications team, the city, and most departments meet with their public communications team once a quarter. We meet with ours every other week because that's how much more we do than everybody else as far as communications. We actually supposedly have our own public communications person. That's not really true, but that's what they told us. So we do a ton of communication. We put it out on our newsletter, but we put it out on all the communication channels. The city has its own newsletter. We used to have a magazine, but we really need to tell the public and then going out and doing it in person because that's super important. You can put signs up and you can do whatever, but until you actually talk to people one-on-one, it's really hard to make them understand.
What did you major in for undergrad and how did you find Patel?
I had a double major in anthropology and classical history at UF, so very liberal arts kind of broad-minded. And then I left the country for about 10 years. It was supposed to be 1 year, and then it was 10 years. And I traveled all over the world. And I was decided I should probably come home. So when I came home, I said I should probably go to grad school because my undergraduates obviously are not very useful. So I was looking at USF, and I saw this master's in global sustainability. Keep in mind, this was 2017. And I was like, what does this mean? I don't really know what that word means, but I like global because that sounds good. And then I read it and I was like, oh my God, I love that. Like, I've always cared about the environment. And like I said, I just traveled the whole world and I saw the very differences. I've seen Northern Europe where it's like everything's eco-friendly. I've seen Central America where everything's eco-friendly as a necessity. And then I've seen things you do not want to see. And so I won't name what countries, but I've seen all of it. And America's kind of in the middle, honestly. And so I wanted to change that. So that's how I found it.
What sustainable practices from other countries did you see that you would like to implement here or in the US?
That's a great question. So I think in general, like I said, in Latin America, everything is eco-friendly and it's out of necessity, right? They don't have a lot of resources. So you will see like sidewalks built out of plastic water bottles and it's super cool. But it's also just become a part of the culture. You'll see signs everywhere about it, obviously Western and Northern Europe, Australia as well. Being eco-friendly is very cool, fashionable. I don't know that it so much is here. I mean, sometimes it is. I definitely think we as a culture could be more into sustainability. And hopefully the younger generation, I guess I'm no longer a part of, will do that.
How much do you work with the sustainability officers of the other cities in the Tampa Bay area?
So we meet once a month for 2 hours with PSRN, and then we meet, I think, quarterly with Tampa Bay Regional Planning with TBSRN. And so probably once a week I'm meeting with one of those ones.
I was just curious if you were working during those 10 years. Like, were you?
Was sometimes.
That sounds awesome.
It was.
Traveling the world and everything.
Yeah. So I worked in college. I had a full scholarship, but then I just worked full time anyways. And I saved a bunch of money before I left. But then as I was traveling, I would teach English and then live somewhere and then travel and then kind of off and on working and not working.
Okay.
Questions? Thank you so much, Cassie.
Guys, let's just get together in the front so we can take a picture with Cassie and then we